Welcome to lesson 3.3, adding and subtracting decimals. So in this lesson we're going to focus on how to add and subtract decimals at least to the thousandths place value. And just before we move on, I just wanted to kind of review place value. I know you've done it in elementary school and you probably did in grade 6, but just as a refresher. So I'm just going to choose a random number. Let's choose the number, 2,473 decimal 694. Okay, so there's our number. So each place in this number is called something, or it has a label, or it has a value. And so we're just going to review the names of those. So let's look on the left-hand side of the decimal first, and this should be pretty much review. So we know that this number right here, we call that the units or the ones place. Because if I just had the number 3, that would mean I have 3 units, or I have 3 ones. If we continue moving to the left, the next number, that place value is called the tens. The next is called the hundreds. Oops, I don't have enough room. Hundreds. And then here we have thousands. So again, that should be pretty much review. You should know that at this point. Let's look at the numbers on the right-hand side of the decimal. So again, just like these ones have names, the place value is called something, as do these ones. So the first place value after the decimal, we call those numbers tenths. Okay, so it's kind of similar to 10, but tenths. And then if we move on, we have hundredths. Oops, ran out of room again. And then our last one here, the 4, if you just kind of are following the pattern, you're correct. If you guess, that would be called thousandths. So when we're adding and subtracting decimals, we're going to be learning how to do it at least 3 spaces after the decimal or to the thousandths place. So we're going to do an example together. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this lesson because I know you guys know how to add and subtract at this point, and you should know how to add and subtract large numbers at this point. And I'm just going to kind of give you reminders about the decimal, because that's kind of the common mistake when we're adding and subtracting numbers with decimals, is that sometimes people get confused and they don't know where the decimal goes in the solution, or how they line up their question when they start to add or subtract, because there's a decimal in there. So let's look at this example, and I'm on page 97 in our textbook if you wanted to follow along. So, Ephraim is a long-distance runner. His practice distances for 5 days last week are shown in the table below. So, part A is how far did Ephraim run in 5 days last week, so Monday through Friday. And then B says how much farther did he run on Tuesday than Thursday. So, if we look at our table down here, we can see each day and the distance that he has run. So if we're looking to answer part A, how far did he run in the last 5 days? So they want to know, what is this total distance that he ran Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? So we see all these decimals, 8.85, 12.25, 10.9, 9.65, and 14.4. We need to add all those numbers up, essentially, to see how far he ran in the week. So there's a couple of things that should be going through your mind before you do this. The first thing when we're adding or subtracting or really doing any kind of mathematical concept is use your common sense and make an estimation. And then after you solve it, if you know that you're relatively close, then you're probably on the right track. And if your answer is kind of way off than what you thought it was, you might want to go and look back and see if you made a mistake somewhere. So my first step in looking at this question, and I'm looking at all these numbers, I see 8.85, 12.25. I'm going to start just by kind of making an educated guess. So I'm going to round all of those numbers to a whole number. So 8.85, I'm going to round to 9. I'm going to round 12.25. I'm just going to keep it at 12. I'm going to round down. 10.9 I know is close to 11, so I'm going to round up. 9.65. I'll change to 10 and 14.4. I'm just going to round down. So if I add up all of these numbers, now that I've rounded them to a whole number, and I know how to add whole numbers, I'm just going to add this up and see what I get. So 9 plus 2, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Carry the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my answer should be around 56. That's kind of my estimate. And if I know my answer is way off from that, then I need to go back and relook at it. And this estimation is also going to help me place my decimal where it needs to go in my actual answer in case I kind of make a mistake or I get confused about where the decimal needs to go. So when we're adding and subtracting decimals, so now I'm going to actually solve the equation. The important thing you need to remember is your decimals all need to line up in the same place. So for example, if we look at this number, 8.85, I see we only have 3 numbers total. However, we have 4 numbers here. Regardless of how many numbers you have, the decimal has to be lined up and in the same place, no matter what you're adding. So 8.85. And then I see 12.25. If I was just to go 12.25, are my decimals lined up? No, they're not. So that's not how you set that up. So I would need to make sure. So I would write it like this, 12.25. So now my decimals are lined up and all of my other numbers are lined up. And all numbers in the same place value are lined up. And then I see 10.9, so I know my decimal is going to need to go there. So I'm going to go 10.9. 9.65, I know my decimal needs to go there, 9.65. And then 14.4, I know my decimal needs to go there, and then 14. So that's kind of the first step in doing that. So all of our decimals are lined up, our numbers are organized, all of our place values line up. However, what do I do here? I see kind of blank space for a few numbers. Remember how we talked about in class, you can always, always, always add a 0 to the end of your numbers when they have a decimal, and it never changes the value of it. So I'm just going to fill that in just for my own kind of peace of mind, just to make it a little easier. So I'm just going to add a 0 to those numbers because 14.4 and 14.40, it doesn't change the value of the number. It still represents the same thing. So now I have all my numbers, and it's a relatively easy process to add. So knowing 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 5 is 15. I'm just looking at my pencil here. So I'm going to write my 5, carry my 1. So 8 plus 1 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 plus 9 is 20. Add to 6, 26, plus 4, so that equals 30. So I'm going to put my 0, carry my 3 to my next set of numbers, and I'm going to continue to add. So 8 plus 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 22, 3, 4, 5, 26. So I'm going to put my 6 and carry my 2. And then I have 2 plus 1 is 3, 4, 5. So my answer comes out to 50. So I have 5605. But remember, we need the decimal in that answer somewhere. And I'm not going to change the area of my decimal, and I'm just going to leave it, making sure it's lined up. So my answer is 56.05. And just to confirm, is this answer close to this answer? Yes, it is. It's relatively close, so I know that my estimation was right on, and I know that my answer, my decimal is more than likely in the right spot, and that I probably lined it up correctly. If my decimal was in a different spot, that should be kind of a red flag to me that I need to relook at where that decimal is. And just really quickly, I'm not going to write it out, but the other option and the other way that your textbook explains that you can add numbers with decimals is you just add the numbers without any decimal spaces. So I would just add, for example, 885 plus 1,225 plus 1,090 plus 965, and so on without the decimal space, and then place the decimal where you think is appropriate based on your first estimation, which ours was 56 here. So that's another way you can do that. And then looking at part B of the question really quickly. How much farther did Ephraim run on Tuesday than Thursday? So I see that on Tuesday he ran 12.25 kilometers, and then on Thursday he ran 9.65. Again, same as addition, you need to make sure your decimals are all lined up. So he ran 9.65 kilometers on Tuesday. So what is the difference? So we know that difference equals subtraction. And so we just need to solve this using subtraction. We know our decimal is going to be in exactly the same spot in our answer. So let's start with this. 5 subtract 5 is 0. 2 subtract 6. So I know that I can't subtract 6 from 2 because there's not enough, so I need to borrow. So I'll borrow from the 2. I'll change that to a 1, and then I'll carry my 1 over. So 12 subtract 6 is 6. And then I'm going to move over. 1 subtract 9. I can't take 9 away from 1 because there's not enough, so I need to borrow. So I'm going to change that 1 to a 0. And I'll carry my 1. So now I have 11 subtract 9 is 2, and then we're left with 0. So we know that Ephraim ran 2.60 more kilometers on Tuesday than he did on Thursday. So again, you guys know how to add and subtract, but I'm really encouraging you to make these estimates before you add or subtract. And again, we could have done it here, and I'm sorry, we probably should have, but kind of looking back on it now, just to make sure we're kind of in the right ballpark. If I have 12.25, so I'm going to round that to about 12 for this question, and then 9.65, which I'll round up to 10. The difference between 12 and 10 is 2, so I know that my answer is pretty reasonable here. So make sure you're making those estimates, make sure you're lining up your decimals, and you're really thinking to yourself and kind of using your common sense, like, does this make sense for my answer?